All right. Yeah, my talk is called "Behind the Weird Faces: Procedural Presets for Diverse Generative Content Creation." And first of all, I'm gonna give you a little bit of background about who I am, what I'm doing here. I'm actually a designer. I studied communication design in Germany, and I came here, I think, in September to start my MFA graduate studies at UCLA, and that's also where I met Jörg and got in touch with PaperJS. And my name is Matthias, by the way. And yeah, even though I studied design, like I have been using like custom software for most of my work throughout the, I don't know, past 5 years. Actually, it wasn't anything JavaScript related. I mostly write software in C++ and OpenGL. Simply due to the media nature, like a lot of my works are running in real time. So that has been like the natural choice. So before I start to talk about the weird faces, I'm going to show like 5 screenshots of previous projects so you get an idea. Before coming here, I also freelanced for a year where I had the chance to work on some bigger installation projects. This one is called City Builder, which was together or commissioned by Field.io, which is a small generative design studio in London. And basically what it is, I won't show video footage now, but it's like a huge wall which renders randomly generated cityscapes. Actually, it's like a huge wall. I think it's rendered on eight Mac Pros simultaneously because of the huge resolution. And basically, what this does is generates these cityscapes and then renders isometric buildings around it. The second one was City Lights, which basically uses the same underlying preset to generate the cityscapes, but instead of isometric buildings, it renders some sort of lights. This one is like my bachelor theory. It was like it's basically 2 projections. One is is some sort of memory layer, which is in the top left, which is saving. Basically, what it does, it browses through the newest images on Flickr. It uses them as perceptions, all in real time, and then it basically contrasts those new perceptions with previously seen images in the memory layer. And another thing I did with Field.io last year was like an audiovisual composer, which generated like these ribbon-based physicscapes in real time, and also did the sound, synthesized the sound. And I'm showing these because in all those works I sort of used presets, like procedural presets, which were interacting to get like a very complex and diverse behavior. So yeah, now I'm going to talk about the weird faces, which is my first JavaScript project. Wait, I love this transition. Yeah, basically it was more a happy accident that I made them. As Jörg said, he's teaching at UCLA, so I had to take this programming class. And the assignment was to create a drawing tool. But I'm not as much interested as Jörg in using my hands, so I convinced him that I would just make something purely algorithmic. So these faces are actually, or my goal with this was to write a program that generates faces that sort of look like my hand-drawn faces. And each of those faces is unique, and there's potentially an infinite amount of faces that the software can output that are all completely unique. And the actual amount is basically only limited by the hardware, but that's like neglectable. Yeah, and surprisingly, the project also got, or to me it was very surprising, a huge amount of attention, which I was really happy about. Got like blogged on a lot of nerd blogs like Gizmodo, Boing Boing, Creative Applications, among others. And also got printed in the Observer in the UK. And I don't know, I think I sort of, because I didn't anticipate that at all, I sort of tried to figure out why that was. And I think it's because, first of all, faces give a very very simple entry point into the work. You know, everybody likes faces, I guess. And also it's very different from what you expect a computer to generate, because they have like this very individual hand-drawn feeling to them, which is my explanation for their success. The last iteration, this is like a newer version of them where I just added more presets to increase the diversity and the variety, and also you can see that there are some more happy looking faces. I made this is like a 39 by 96 inch print, I think with like 1,200 faces or something, which I made for the MFA first year show a couple of weeks back for at Design Matters Gallery on Pico. And yeah, one last project I did like as a follow-up is the Weird Faces vending machine. It's basically a comment on how value is generated in a gallery space. Usually digital artworks are limited like artificially just to make them more exclusive and to increase their potential value. So I felt that doesn't make like any sense for this kind of work, because I mean, I can generate infinite faces. It would be sort of weird to just say I print only 10 to make them more valuable. So in a way it was for me like a try to bring the App Store concept to the gallery space and sell like a potential amount of infinite prints for a small or affordable price. And the machine also reads the name from the credit card to write a custom dedication in my handwriting on the back of each print. Just like as a comment on the value thing I mentioned. So I'm just going to briefly show a video about it.
Validating payment. Credit card accepted. Generating the faces now. The print job has been started. Z. Matthias, do not look at me like that. Z. I like the way you wait. Z. So Matthias, you like weird faces? Thank you. Have fun with your weird faces.
Alright, so the next thing I'm going to talk about is how that all relates to what I call presets. In the beginning, when I started like doing procedural graphics or procedural stuff, I always felt that presets is sort of the opposite of generative design, because in the beginning I basically tried to fit everything in one function or object and try to make all the decision making in there. But I guess the answer is yes and no, depending on what you consider a preset. If you think of a preset as something purely static, that is not expressed algorithmically yet, then the answer is yes, it's contrary to generative design. And to connect that back to the weird faces, if I would have, for instance, drawn each eye or each preset by hand and then just made the composition based on software, that would have been very limited in its power, because it basically the stuff couldn't really fit perfectly together. So when I talk about presets, I mean procedural presets, which means that they're not static and they're purely algorithmic, and therefore they also, if randomness is involved, they're also potentially infinite. So just to come back to the weird faces, this was like an initial sketch or concept I made of how to generate the faces. So these are already sort of geometric sketches, and on the right you can see a list of presets that I wanted to do for the different facial parts. I didn't implement all of them simply for time constraints, but usually this is like the way I go about these projects. I just sit down and draw and think about how you know, to make the computer understand what I want to do. And yeah, I guess the next thing is to look at PaperJS. So I wrote a simple example called Fugly Flowers, which sort of uses this preset idea, and also has like uses some Perlin noise to make the shapes look hand drawn, which I'm going to show you now. So first of all, I'm just going to use it. Oh, there we go. So basically what it does, it just uses the mouse handler of PaperJS and draws like a flower in that spot, so at a random angle. So the only thing I have to do is to click and it draws one of those. And the way it does that, oh man, that's big type. So the top part, I'm just gonna go all the way. So basically what I do, this top part is all about Perlin noise. I'm not sure if it's familiar to you. It's some sort of pseudocode, pseudo random number generator. It basically looks, if you visualize it, like the clouds in Photoshop, if that helps. And this is just a little helper function that applies noise to a PaperJS path or group. And but that's not that important for now, so I'm just going to go to the project logic. Like a lot of this code is actual small classes that that are the different preset. Oh no! Oh no! That are the actual presets. Alright, so I guess this is where the actual project logic starts, like the program logic. So there's 3 global arrays for the different parts of the flower, which is one grow preset, which basically just is for the stem of the flower and distributes the points that are then rendered by the line render preset, which renders the flower stem. And then there are some blossom center render presets, which is basically the center on top of the stem, and blossom leaf render presets, which basically takes the shape of the blossom center and generates something around it. And inside the actual on mouse down handler, I'm basically just selecting a random preset and initializing it, like it's object oriented, and generate a random direction, which is basically just basic vector operations, generate the stem points, and then take the last stem point to place the blossom center preset, and then generate the leaves around it. So, and this down here is basically just to make the noise. So what it does is it basically puts all the paths which are generated into one group, applies the noise to it to make it like a little curvy, so it looks a little bit more hand-drawn, and then it basically clones the group and just removes all fill color, makes the stroke width a lot smaller, and does it again. So that's basically, I'm not sure if you can see it on the screen, but basically it has like 2 outlines, like one very thin one, so it looks a little bit more sketched. And as you can see, like the program logic is like maybe 40 lines of code, so if I wanted to add like more complexity now, I could just add new presets. So the preset logic is basically all the way up here. So I'm just going to go all the way up to the. I actually think this is wrong object-oriented programming in JavaScript. I just don't know any better. Basically, this is the straight grow preset, and it has a generate function, which just generates a couple of points in a straight line, and then returns them as an array. And the wobbly grow preset does basically the same, but it offsets the point along its normal, which is basically the 90 degrees, so it becomes like this curvy line. And yeah, so yeah, I'm just gonna switch back to the presentation. I'm almost done. Yeah, so from my point of view, I mean, this might not make super much sense for a simple thing like a flower to generate, but for more complex projects, you have like the program logic and the actual things that are generated or displayed entirely separated. So it becomes like very modular because you can test each preset on its own, and it's entirely decoupled from the program logic. So the code becomes very extendable, and you already get a huge variety with just a handful of presets, because basically what you're actually designing is like the interface between the preset, because you try to keep that as minimal as possible. So for instance, the flower stem only needs to know where to the flower center point like of the blossom only needs to know where it has to be placed, and the leaves around it only needs to know the shape of the flower center. So you really, if the dependencies between those individual presets are very, yeah, I guess that's a challenge about designing things like that, but it's really worth the trouble for more complex projects. And yeah, I think that's it from me. You can check out the source code on my Bitbucket. I don't have a GitHub account yet. In Europe, it's all about Bitbucket.
Do you mind repeating the question?
Say again?
You're going to get some questions. Do you mind repeating the question?
No, that's fine.
I don't want to oversimplify what you obviously put. I mean, 40 lines of code for something that's complex is a lot of work. But would you say this is somewhat analogous to creating a filter for Photoshop, or is it more dependent? You were getting dependencies visually, but I'm wondering if it is similar to like a filter effect for PaperJS, like it would be, like a filter would be in Photoshop.
So the question is if you mean the flower program?
Yes, you said it was built off of PaperJS, right?
Oh yeah. So the question is if the...
It's almost like a filter effect like you would use in Photoshop.
Yeah.
And again,
I'm just going to repeat it for the video. So the question is if the flower program is similar to a filter in Photoshop in relation to PaperJS. And I think the answer is no, because I don't really know how to answer the question, because PaperJS is like a programming environment, so I can just do with it whatever I want within its limits. So yeah, I don't know what else to say about that. Any more?
How many presets did you have for the faces?
How many presets did I have for the faces? Actually, surprisingly few. I think I only had 2 for the ears, maybe 4 or 5 different eyes, 3 different head shapes, 3 different hair types. But they're, as I said earlier, they're expressed algorithmically, so within those 3 presets there's also already a huge variety. So I think this was already 400 lines of code. I think the faces are maybe 4 times as much. I made the first version actually in like 3 to 5 days or something.
Do you think you're going to
do more projects in JavaScript now since you did this one?
I don't. It might happen. Like the thing is, I mean, I like JavaScript for programming. I just don't like dealing with the web because, like, the problem is, for instance, when I tried to generate this huge print I showed in between, it took me like a day to figure out that the Apache post variable wasn't big enough to post the SVG. So it's just like way different problems compared to writing native code. But I mean, I like the simplicity of scripting languages, so I guess the answer is yes.
Have you had a chance to compare it with compare paper to like other SVG frameworks or libraries like 2 or Raphael?
Have I had the chance to compare PaperJS to other vector libraries like Raphael? No. I really only looked at paper, and I'm actually working on an open source C++ framework right now, and I sort of feel like I have a good feeling for when a library is good, well designed, and paper is really worth looking at. So take a look at it.
Why do you have to use a random algorithm instead of just the built-in one for the cloud?
You mean a built-in random from JavaScript?
Yeah.
I used it. It's actually in there. The noise is only to generate sort of predictable random numbers. So if I would offset the outlines purely random, it would be super. It wouldn't be smooth. So Perl noise is sort of like also, for instance, used for procedural terrain in computer games, so to get like more predictable ranges of random numbers.